Hi, good evening to everyone. Thank you for joining me. This is more of a Sunday relaxed chat. And today I have Gert Vanden Bossche. Now, for anyone who has followed the trajectory as to what I was doing, because I was interviewing people all the way in early 2020, looking at different angles of understanding the pandemic. And then in March of 2021, I had that most incredible interview with Gert Vanden Bossche. It was quite remarkable. I knew it at the time that this was probably one of those really important interviews. And so at that point, when I had that interview, that then exploded. I think a lot of the part of the explosion was because of Del Bigtree. So I have to give him credit for sharing. I think he looked at the video and he then analyzed it on his channels, and it got over 1.5, I think going up to 1.8 million views. So I credit a lot of my reach at the moment to Gert, and it was because of that interview. And so whenever there is a way to support Gert in anything he's doing, I'm always very happy to help. And so this is now a chat about a course coming up that he is doing. So I'm making it very clear what we're talking about. We're going to be talking about elements around the course. We're going to be chatting a little bit about getting some updates, but he will do a formal interview later on when he's finished some more of his research. But this is just about me raising the profile of this course to my followers and subscribers, and as well to get a little bit of a chat, which is always great, from Gert. So let me just get him in. Hi, Gert. How are you doing?
Hi, Philip. Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you. Thanks.
Wonderful. So, listen, Gert, I think we'll get straight into the primary thing. As I said, the primary focus of this is looking at your course. You're doing a course coming up in the next few weeks, and I'll just show the course flyer for people that can see it. This is it here. It's a 12-week virtual online course. So, what made you put it together? We'll come back to the image in a little bit.
Yeah, well, Philip, what made me put it together was not, and maybe you will come to this, not at all commercial interest, but really the need that I felt to share my deeper insights into, understanding what is going on. We are dealing, as you know, with a very, very complex phenomenon. These interactions between the immune system and the virus at a population level. And frankly speaking, up till today, what you can conclude from all you read is that it is, regardless which party you consider, it's very confusing to people and they don't understand what is going on. And I know, about the complexity of this, and I have invested myself an enormous amount of time in teasing out the details about this and putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And it was just my desire or feeling really the need to share this with other people so that more people begin to critically analyze and question and ask the questions at every single evolutionary step of the virus. Why is this happening? I didn't expect this. So why does it happen? What are the factors that come into the play, etc. So yeah, that was the incentive, and that it was my motivation for putting this course together.
And so you've done this course before, but this was probably what, a year ago? And
Yeah.
this is now an updated version of that course?
Well, yeah, I started in September, so it's in fact recently gave the course because it's over 12 weeks, and I taught the course all the way till mid-December. But of course, this is an evolving story, and yeah, there is certainly already a need to update it. And also, as I was saying, the desire to share these insights with an even broader audience, I was pleasantly surprised that people, from different nationalities, different background, were attending the course. And there was, in all modesty, I think, one can ask the organizers, a lot of enthusiasm, which, motivated me to do another course now in spring.
Excellent. So yeah, so this is now I'm going to be showing people, because as I said, the primary purpose of this is first to get people to think about the course, and it's not a free course. So that's one of the questions people will ask. Why not give this as a free course? Come on, Gert. I'm sure you've heard that many times.
No, I've not. I've not heard that many times. Well, first of all, let's say I have been using a platform that is. It's basically a collaboration between a US and a UK platform that is specialized on sharing educational materials. And these platforms exist for quite some time, and there is many courses that people can follow, and there is none of these courses is for free. So even if I wanted to give it for free, I would probably not be eligible in my course for this kind of platform. So obviously, very clear, and that is legitimate. I'm probably getting, well, not probably getting, a part of the cake, but people who do the advertising and who organize this and put all the tools in place, they get, of course, also part of the cake. Now, this being said, I must tell you that people, and again, one can ask, there is testimonies that people can ask this, the previous participants. They thought it was like, a bargain. It was super cheap. Most of the times I was not teaching like 90 minutes, but 2 hours. And then there were, so many people who had questions and sent me emails, and I responded, I would say, to 90% of the questions, all in my spare time. So it's all, and then the preparation of this course, I did it for the very first time. It was not that I had slides ready to go. I really started everything from scratch. So I put an enormous amount of time in this. If I would count, the money I made per hour, it's probably something like maybe $5, right? So there is. I think there is a minimum. Frankly speaking, I mean, I hope people got to know my passion and my motivation, because commercially speaking, I mean, I would make more money doing something different than putting these courses together and opening myself to getting challenged by people with all kinds of different backgrounds, asking easy questions, but sometimes asking very difficult questions, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think one of the things I can say is that I have been so appreciative. Recently, we did a Kickstarter program on a book that was a collaboration with Lumentia. My brother does a publication company, and so we were looking for support, and we actually hit the target. And there is so much motivation that comes when you realize that people are willing to support you, not just with thank you, but with financial support, because it means that this is viable. So I think that it's important for people to recognize that it does have an impact on people who are working, trying to come up with stuff. It takes a lot of time to put
Mm,
some of these things together. It really takes a lot of time and thought. You almost have to become a little bit obsessed about it in order to be able to think about it in this much detail. So, I agree with you that the support is always very, very, very
mm,
important. So, just we'll come back to the course in a little bit, because, as I said to people who are listening, my primary aim here now is to raise the profile for Gert. I'm appreciative of everything he has done, and I think anyone who has an interest in this should certainly be thinking about supporting it and joining in the course for the educational value as well. But you had recently put out a statement about JN1, the Rock and Roll Party. And this is, I guess, part of some of the research you're doing now and what's coming up, hopefully, when we get you again on another live. But what generally is this about that made you publish this?
That's a good question, Philip, because my motivation to publish this was really that after we have seen, a period of viral evolution that was pretty targeted, for example, to the receptor binding domain and to certain very specific epitopes, we all of a sudden, shift to an era where the virus is evolving in all kinds of different ways. All of a sudden, not only the spike protein is bombarded with mutations, but even a number of other viral proteins that are, for example, more involved in the replication of the virus, or that involved in the infection or the clearance of the virus from cells. And so when you read, not many people still follow this, I guess, but if you follow, for example, on Twitter or on other social platforms, the mutation spotters, you see that the evolution is still enormous in terms of the number of mutations. And one can ask the question, but what is going on? Why is the virus continuing to evolve, whereas clinically speaking, not that much is happening? The protections, so to say, against the severe disease, and even to some extent against disease. I'm talking always about COVID, disease due to COVID. Is still more or less stable. So what is the role, what is the purpose of all these mutations, where a number of different variants are now circulating at the same time, where mutations are accumulating? It seems like the virus is dancing, that's why I'm calling the rock and roll, till all of a sudden a mutation happens that enables the virus to make the next leap to something that is unknown so far. And that is what I think is happening. You have to realize, first of all, we still have relatively high infection rates, but of course they are underestimated because most of the infections are now asymptomatic. And then there is still a lot of immune pressure on the virus. But according to my theory, with regard to the non-neutralizing antibodies that prevent virulence, this immune pressure is now focused on an epitope within the N-terminal domain of spike that is not variant specific. It's not variant specific, so that enables many, many variants now to circulate and to compete with each other, etc. So it's no longer deriving a specific mutation. And that explains why the mutations, I would say, are all over the place. But my hypothesis is that amino acids now get reshuffled till we achieve a constellation of amino acids that will be optimal and suitable to accommodate the glycans that I'm always talking about, that could, enhance the immune subversion of the virus, because that is a big step if the glycosylation starts to change dramatically. But you have to be able to accommodate these glycan chains, and therefore there need to be a number of amino acid mutations to make that happen. And that is what I think is happening, and that is what I'm briefly explaining in this article.
Yeah, and actually, you have demonstrated there, because even in that section that you were talking about, there are about 3 or 4 questions that would come up that I'd then want to try and understand, or you said something that I'd want you to explain a bit further. And this is what you're saying you're doing in the course. You're then able to break down those questions to individual people who are part of this to get a better understanding of what you're seeing. And let me ask you a question, because some people will still criticize what you're saying. And you did put a date on recently, which I think is always dangerous, that you thought that this would happen within a certain period of time. Do you think it was a mistake to say a date, or do you strongly hold to fast to timing?
Yeah, it was definitely a mistake. It was essentially a mistake the first time around. But that mistake, and I'm not trying to find excuses, but I mean, I'm just so amazed what is happening, this phenomenon, this whole viral evolution. It's sad to say, I'm still convinced the outcome is not going to be to bring good news. On the other hand, scientifically speaking, I've repeated this, frequently. It's the most amazing science, the most intriguing science I've ever touched upon. Because remember, Philip, if with regard to the time point, so with regard to your question, when the virus, normally our understanding of many people was that if the virus breaks through the immunity, we have mounted antibody responses, whether it's through natural immunity or through the vaccines, the purpose was to induce neutralizing antibodies that can neutralize the virus and eliminate the virus. And then you break through this. That is what I predicted, that the virus will break through this defense of neutralizing antibodies. Then normally you expect when the virus breaks through this, that it is going to be a catastrophe. I'm always saying, if you're dealing with a virus that can destroy cells and you have no immunity, any of these viruses can be highly virulent. But guess what? Something happened. We don't need to go into the detail, of course, but something happened that I'm calling the immune refocusing, that gave the immune system an opportunity to catch up to some extent. Not sufficiently to control the virus, but certainly to mitigate the progression towards more and more infectious. And of course, that is what explains why what I predicted back, 1 year ago or even more, did not at all appear within the timeline that I had predicted. Now, I've again been predicting things in a sense that this cannot go on forever. And we see that the virus continues to evolve, highly infectious. And that, in fact, at some point, we see that the limit, some virologists are even saying, we cannot imagine that the virus could possibly even get more infectious. This must be the limit. And then if the limit is such that the virus can no longer enhance its transmission or the efficacy of its transmission by spreading from one person to another, what it then does, the only way still to, to ensure its replication and its survival is that it spreads within the host itself. That is the dissemination to the different organs. And I'm kind of like, feeling that this accumulates towards a limit where the evolution is no longer linear but exponential. And therefore, I've been saying at the beginning of this year or even at the end of last year that for me, it would be very difficult to imagine that this would take yet another 3, 4, 5 months. So I think I've cautiously even being mentioning the end of March or something, but you're fully right. I should probably not do this because it's completely unprecedented. We have never, ever in the history of biology, in the history of virology, we have never, ever dealt with a phenomenon where we have massively immunized people in a way that the immunity cannot control the virus. We have never done this. And we see that this is not on the right track, that it's very, very clear. Whatever you pretend, it's very, very clear. Everybody needs to admit that the virus is not under control. And everybody knows, every virologist knows that this is a very dangerous situation. And it is, the pressure is mounting. We can see this, because also the excess deaths. Don't think that this is not related to immune escape. I've written another article on this, because the, immune refocusing means you are eliciting other immune responses that are not very efficacious. Therefore, they promote immune escape, but at the same time, they have detrimental effects. And we hear about these cancers, we hear about immunity, etc. So all this is linked, and we see how this is simply increasing. So if you follow this a little bit, you cannot do otherwise than feeling like, a bomb is to explode somewhere. I have this very, very strong feeling that it is a very acute situation. But you're right, I should not put an exact time point on when this is going to happen, because honestly, indeed, nobody exactly knows. We cannot draw any parallels. We have no precedent, right?
Now, this is a good time again to remind people this is why you need to register for this course. Listen, as I said, anyone who has listened to Gert knows the depth of his knowledge. So, again, me reminding people that's the purpose as to why I'm here with regards to this. So, let me pull back another question for you, Gert, before we tie this up. When it comes to, imagine the CDC had pulled you in and they said, listen, okay, Gert, we acknowledge that you probably know what's going on. Do you agree with what they have done now, where they have largely dropped all the isolation restrictions and technically are saying, go back to normal, I guess just keep on getting vaccinated and you'll be fine? What would you say to them?
Well, first of all, so I will clearly answer your question. But first of all, not that I'm approving it or disapproving it, but I can understand their reaction, because very clearly, I think finally, they realize that whatever they do, they cannot, they did not, and they will not control the virus, right? The only thing, Philip, is that in the past, with all their measures, with all their sophisticated and complicated measures, they maybe managed to delay the whole thing a little bit. But I think they are now understanding that even that is no longer possible. They cannot delay this. You have, like, again, follow the mutation spotters. It's like literally every week there are spectacular mutations. So what I would tell them is what I told already, I would say, a year ago. At this point in time, the only thing you can do, if you don't have herd immunity, because herd immunity means you would control the virus. The definition is that it dramatically diminishes viral transmission. The only way you can do this is with, instead of doing mass vaccination, is massively administering antivirals to highly vaccinated populations. That is the only thing, if they work, of course, and if you do it massively, that would dramatically cut viral transmission, so that the outcome would be something similar as having herd immunity in a large population. But they are, of course, we know that they are not going to do this, and we are not even talking about the specific antiviral, right? Uh, but yeah, and they are not going to do this. They have no candidate, that would be eligible for such a mass prophylactic administration, a large-scale prophylactic administration of that drug, let's say. And therefore they simply realize it doesn't make sense. It is even more inconvenient than anything else to take all these keep all these measures in place, because on the other hand, they are no longer doing the sequences, they are no longer doing the testing, etc. And on the other hand, they would keep these measures in place. They cannot even prove that they are, efficient, or they cannot even check the effect of, or the consequences of these health measures. So in other words, I think they finally realize that this is a complete nonsense, and frankly speaking, it has been a nonsense from the very beginning, as we all know.
Yeah. So listen, for those who are listening, and if you've joined late, the purpose of this discussion is to highlight Gert's course. This is my way of supporting everything that Gert has done and how much I valued the conversations that we've had. It's starting on the 6th of March, 2024. So this is just in a few days. So there are just just a few days left before you can register for it. So there's a link in the description below, and he'll be covering lots of areas. And as you said, it's over 12 weeks. So this is a lot of information. And so you can book your course there. For those people who are quite interested, I keep getting asked about when is Gert going to update what's going on. Well, he is doing another deep dive looking at the evolution of the pandemic. And I'm sure within the next, few weeks, maybe a month, once he's finished, we'll be able to have him on to discuss some of the trajectories as to where the pandemic is going. If there is one thing that we need now, there are people who can understand the science around what is going on at this stage of the pandemic. If you have a question for the general public, is that if you're listening to people who didn't know what was going to happen at the beginning, what makes you think they're going to understand at this point? So this is why I appreciate Gert, because he said it from the start. This was going to be the outcome. I would trust what he is saying as he continues to try and analyze it. So any final thoughts, Gert, with regards to your course?
Yeah, well, I would like to emphasize two things very quickly. The first one is that people should realize that I'm doing this in a very scientific way. I'm not interested in sharing pre-digested conclusions with people on what the health authorities have been doing, whether this was wrong or right. But it was for me an amazing conclusion that when I was explaining the science and the dynamics as well of how the immune system is reacting, as the response of the virus, etc., that a number of people automatically themselves were then asking the question, oh, then this in fact didn't make that much sense, or why did we do this, or why was that decision taken, etc. And that is, of course, the cherry on the pie. When you provide the information to people, the knowledge, you raise awareness about, having a critical view on things, and then they come themselves with this kind of conclusions. That is fantastic. The second thing I would like to emphasize is one of the reasons I'm really also doing this is I hope that some young scientists or younger people are also attending this, because it's so important that we get the next generation of scientists looking at complex problems in a holistic and multidisciplinary way. I think if there is one lesson that the pandemic taught us in terms of to the science, to the scientists, is very, very clearly that our silo approach, being a deep expert in a particular field, does not enable us to solve complex problems and to have insights into how these interactions play out, how this interplay between the virus and the immune system, and that you can only get an insight to this if you take the multidisciplinary approach, and if you continuously ask the right questions. My peer reviewers have been all the people who have been listening to me on a daily basis, were asking me questions, sometimes difficult questions, where again I had to dive into the science, even take a deeper dive, etc. And finally came again to some insights that, thanks to them, I was gaining, I didn't have before. So I think it's especially that kind of atmosphere, that kind of mentality I want to create with the course, because it's impossible to go into the detail, of course, of all the different topics, but raising this awareness and making people passionate about a different approach, a holistic, a completely integrated, multidisciplinary approach to solving complex problems, and in this way being able to give back to society, right? It's more about publications. It's about finding solutions and trying to implement those in a rational way that everybody can understand. The science is complex, but once people grasp, even in the course, 50% of this, it seems like the solutions are so simple, which is fantastic, in fact. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to explain and to elaborate a little bit on the course. I sincerely hope not for commercial interest, but I'm passionate about this, and I want to contaminate others with my passion and with my critical views. Thanks.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Really appreciate it, Gert. So, yes, thank you very much. And thank you for people who are listening. If you are interested, please click on the link below and lots of information to gain from Gert over the next 3 months. As the pandemic transitions, you can't be asking for a better person to be instructing you. Thank you, Gert. If you can hang fire for me, I'll just play this outro. And again, I encourage everyone to participate.